Brazil's 215 million people have elected a left-leaning president, ousting a controversial far-right populist. Yesterday, they elected a former president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, better known to Brazilians simply as Lula. He has defeated the controversial Jair Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro was widely criticized for human rights abuses, including opening up the Amazon rainforest to developments and his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, which left Brazil with one of the highest death rates in the world. André Pellegrini is a historian and a political observer. He's the author of, or he's one of the contributors to the Brazilian Report. He joins us now from Farmville, Virginia. Professor Pellegrini, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's start with, you are a longtime watcher and writer on Brazilian politics. What do you make of this political sea change in Brazil?
I think the first thing to note is that it's a very strong repudiation of Bolsonaro's four-year term. This is the first time since re-election was allowed to incumbents that the incumbent has not won. Usually, the power of the incumbency is very significant. We saw Bolsonaro in the final days of the campaign really trying to use the machinery of the state to get himself re-elected, and it failed. So this is, I think, the major takeaway is that the Brazilian people, the fourth largest democracy in the world, soundly rejected Bolsonaro's brand of far-right authoritarianism. And it matters for the region.
Okay, and for the world and for Canada, let's look at one of the aspects of that. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has joined the ranks of leaders congratulating President Lula on his victory. He says he welcomes working with him and working to advance shared priorities like protecting the environment. So of course, he's referring to preserving the rainforest. How much do you think President Lula's election will change the approach to saving the rainforest, which came open to development under President Bolsonaro?
This was less of an issue during the campaign than I would have expected, but I do think it will figure prominently in Lula's attempt to sort of reintroduce Brazil to the world. Brazil's standing has really diminished under Bolsonaro, and the Amazon rainforest will be a major part of what he tries to do. Now, one of the arguments Bolsonaro made during the campaign was that deforestation was actually higher under the Workers' Party than under his administration, which may statistically be true, but no other government in Brazilian history has reduced deforestation by as much as Lula did as president. So Lula will come into power asserting that Brazil knows how to rein in deforestation, is committed to doing so, and I think this has a lot of world leaders who are interested in preserving the Amazon around the world very enthusiastic about what a new Lula administration will mean in that regard.
Okay, President Putin and Chinese President Xi have also congratulated President Lula on his victory. They talked about the desire to further development of the so-called BRIC bloc of countries, this new economic and political bloc of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Now, former President Bolsonaro was neutral on the issue of Vladimir Putin's war on Ukraine. President Lula has been quoted as being fairly neutral as well, saying he thinks there's blame on both sides. Where do you think Brazil's position will go in terms of the issue of the Western Front against Vladimir Putin?
It's interesting. You mentioned the wave of world leaders who are congratulating Lula today. One of them, very recently, was President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine, who noted his eagerness to work with Brazil. And you're right, though. During the campaign, Lula refused to cast Ukraine as entirely blameless in this war. So this will be a very early major test of Lula's diplomacy of what to do about what should Brazil's position be. You're right that Bolsonaro himself was also neutral in a way that I think Lula, for different reasons, will arrive at perhaps a similar position, which is that diplomacy is necessary. Neither side is entirely blameless, but also criticizing Russia's role for the war itself. I think this is part of a larger strategic reset that Lula will attempt to carry out on the world stage. Of course, during his time in office, Brazil reached really prominent levels of global engagement. Brazil was looked to very often to mediate regional disputes, international disputes. I think Lula is eager to reassert that role. Of course, the world today is much different than it was 20 years ago, with new challenges and new actors. So the Ukraine issue will be a key early test.
Something interesting to watch. Well, listen, we will keep in contact, and I want to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you again for the invitation. I'm happy to come back next time to talk more about Brazil.